Board of Finance meeting. First up is a motion for approval of tonight's agenda. Moved by Dave Forsythe, second by Mr. Fay. Discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Approval of the minutes of June 27th, made by Mr. Curran, second by Mr. Perkins. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. So we have from with us tonight, Luke Malecki and Charles Trottier, Drescher and Malecki, to talk about our thanks. Right up there. Sure.
We have some slides available. I think Dylan for a second. I'll just introduce myself. My name is Luke Malecki. I am a partner at the firm Drescher Malecki. We perform the external audit engagement and your single audit for the federal government compliance. With me is our senior manager, Charles Trottier, who oversees the field work. Today, we're going to meet with the audit committee and go over the findings of the results of the audit in detail. Certainly had a good conversation with them. My point of tonight's presentation is just to give the finance committee a brief overview of the results. Just foremost on some of the schematics here is we are wrapping up the audit. We finished all of our field work. We had draft financial statements that had been provided to the audit committee and to management. We were just waiting on a couple of returning letters, and once we receive those, we'll be in a position to release. A much quicker process than in years past, very streamlined by the treasurer's office. We're very grateful for their participation and their assistance, and we look forward to finalizing the audit. So on the first slide is the products of the audit. Foremost, we are hired as an external third party that is independent of the county to perform a series of tests to determine whether or not the financial statements reflect reasonably without material misstatement the position of the county at December 31st, 2021, and for the year then end. We do anticipate issuing an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, is the best opinion you can get. In other words, we feel that a reader of these financial statements can reasonably rely on the numbers that are included here. We also perform what is referred to as government auditing standards audit. By that, we gain an understanding of internal controls as they surround you, as they affect your financial statements. Any items that might come to our attention that we feel warrants the attention of this board, or could potentially cause a material mistake to those financial statements, would be communicated as a finding, either a significant deficiency or a material weakness. We had no such findings in this year's audit. Again, another food bill help on that. The next bullet there, I did mention that we perform what's referred to as a single audit. Uniform guidance of the federal government requires any entity that receives over $750,000, which you receive well over that, is required to have a single audit performed under uniform guidance. What it does is us as auditors work through the schedule of expenditures of federal awards to determine which programs warrant testing based on their criteria. This year we tested 5 programs, mostly within the public health and Department of Social Services, and had no compliance items or no question costs within those tests. So again, another positive stroke on this year's audit. We also will issue what's referred to as an auditor communication letter. That's a formal letter that includes a summary of our required communications that we put under with the audit committee earlier today. Those are also included within that letter. Really no big change in that letter from one year to the next. We did implement a couple of new pronouncements with the treasurer's office, and those did not have any significant effects on the financial statements. The fourth bullet is a management letter. We have included this year a management letter with some new reporting items that are going to come to the attention of the county. In particular, there's a new statement on the pronouncement on the horizon for leases that we've worked with the treasurer already and started to implement a process and are well into the process of implementing, ready to absorb the extra work from that new accounting standard. We also issued a Department of Transportation report. This is an area of improvement from one year to the next. In the 2020 audit, there was one finding that was cited for the use of a code that wasn't consistent with what the state requested. That was addressed by the county and has been removed for this year. So no findings within that Department of Transportation report also. Finally, within early May or late May, we certified a cost report for the CFR of the health department, and that went without edge there. So really, on a qualitative standpoint, unmodified opinion, no findings, no questioning costs, a very clean audit for the county. Very briefly, I'll touch upon some of the financial updates for the year ended. Foremost, the first chart shows a comparison of the revenues and expenditures, kind of how you see. We can certainly make this PDF available through the website or however the treasurers and administrators deems worthy. But what you can see here is the blue line consistently maintains a steady balance above the red line. And what that was is in response to the fiscal distress designation in 2015, 2016, and a very systematic and methodical approach to replenish fund balance. In this past year, the gap between the blue and the red line expanded slightly, and that's largely the fact that we saw statewide with increased sales tax coming to the counties and other local municipalities. In the end, where you saw in the past 17 to 2020, you saw the increase in fund balance fluctuate from about 4.5 million to 7 million. This past year, we'll be right on that same track, which got about an extra $6 million of sales tax that were unexpected. You saw us at your fund balance increased by 12.5 million. Ending fund balance wound up at $48.4 million in the general fund. Unassigned, which is the portion that's available for any use of the county, and that's the portion that's stacked up against your fund balance policy, was at 30.1 million. That was an increase of about 7.1 million. The other portion of that increase of 5.4 million has been proposed by administration to fund some of your reserves, commitments, and your assignments. Excuse me, a large portion of that is proposed to fund some of the self-insurance committed fund balance, as well as $1.5 million going to capital projects. There's also about $1.1 million of purchase orders that were set in 2021, haven't been liquidated as of December 31st, so that money was carried over, an extra $1.1 million than the previous year, close to $2 million total. So what that means is your total non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned fund balance is at 18.3 million this year versus 12.9 million. When we look at this compared to the fund balance policy, is to look at the appropriated fund balance, unassigned fund balance to next year's appropriation, which would be the 2020 budget. It's about $220 million. You're at about 13% of that number. Getting closer to that 15, but not quite there. I also want to bring attention, it's not included within the slides, but the highway and the road machinery funds are now at a pretty low fund balance amount. Same tax base, the money does get shifted between your general funds to help fund those funds. However, any fluctuations from the adopted budget is going to have to be absorbed by the general fund. In other words, if gas prices or pavement costs go up above what was budgeted, including the budget, or the piece of machinery is required, that money is going to have to get shifted from the general fund. So oftentimes it helps to look at those three funds as a combination and see what percentage you're at there. If we took into consideration the extra $28 million or so in those two funds for the 22 budget, you're looking at a total operating fund budget with your general fund, road machinery, and highway at about $250 million. Now, the 30.1 million of unassigned fund balance is really only about 12% of that. Because at this point in time, the situation dictates that if there is a need for savings in those two funds, it's going to come from the general fund. So something to keep in mind, not part of the policy, it's certainly getting closer to the policy, but maybe a little bit tougher situation than it seemed in just looking at the general fund, seeing those other two operating funds. The next slide, we break down the revenues and how we got to that $12.5 million increase. Foremost, you can see the very top portion. I know it's a little hard to see, I apologize. But that's the $9 million in your gross sales tax. Of course, some of that gets distributed to the local municipalities within the county, and about 60% of that stays within the county's hands. This past year, the net sales tax, actual money that stays here in the county budget, is $42.6 million. That's up $5.5 million from the past year. So total revenues, of course, increased by $9 million for sales tax, but the amount that actually stayed here is about 5.4. As I said, a large portion of that $12.5 million was that unprecedented $6 million that came in, and a lot of that money has been proposed by administration to offset some of the costs that potentially are going to hit the taxpayers in the future with the capital costs, equipment purchases, as well as your self-insurance. You also saw a really strong uptick in your state and federal aid. Doesn't anticipate that that's going to continue, because what happened is in 2020, you can see a slight retraction of state and federal aid. Went from $48.1 million in 2019 to $47 million in 2020. A lot of that was because of timing issues with the state. The state was a little bit delayed in processing some of that money, and that flew through into 2021. Also in 2021, there's a lot of federal aid, state and federal aid to support the health response to the COVID pandemic, which hopefully doesn't continue to repeat itself. But that also is part of that $6.5 million of your state and federal aid increase. On the next slide, we take a quick look at the expenditure side of things. Expenditures increased to $10.7 million, not close to the pace of the $18.5 million in revenues. And a large portion of it, about $4 million, was the distribution of that sales tax that increased. Had that not happened, the pace of revenue would have stayed steady with 2018 and 2019. But you did see that the second portion there, that gray portion, go from 48.9 to 54.3. And that's where that distribution of that $4 million is within that category. One thing that we also did see is a sharp incline in the health category, which is the purple one down about 4 down there. And that went from 14.4, and it actually held pretty steady from 17 to 2020 at around 13, high 13s to low 14 million. This past year went to 17.1. Those are all that is where the COVID response comes from, the testing, the immunization sites, as well as the new mental health programs that are being initiated through the state. The last increase of expenses, so we had about $4 million in general government support, about $3 million in health, both kind of one-time, hopefully one-time as far as the COVID goes. The last one was the employee benefits increased by $3 million. You are self-insured, so it's a very unpredictable line item. You had some very favorable years in 2020 or 2018 to 2019. Saw a slight uptick during the pandemic year, the COVID year in 2020. And then this past year, it increased by about $3 million in your health insurance. The response to that is that in the works is implementing some new policies to install to increase the self-insurance committed fund balance, as well as looking into the catastrophic insurance to help cover and soften the blow of future fluctuations with that cost. On a trend of the last slide here is somewhat the success story of the last 5 years as far as replenishing the fund balance. This percentage is a comparison of actual expenditures, not the budgeted expenses. As I said, that when you compare it to the budgeted expenses as per the policy, you're at about 13% of fund balance. So that compares current year fund balance to the 2022 budget. This compares 2021 expenses to 2021 fund balance. It's a consistent denominator to give us a nice little picture here. But in 2017, you had about $9.9 million of unassigned fund balance. That represented close to 6% of your annual spending for that year. The next year, you had about 15.4, getting up to about 9%. Fast forward a couple of years later, in 2019, 2020 stayed somewhat consistent. End of 2020, the pandemic was at its height. You were at 12.6%. Now you're at 15.6% of your total spending for the year. So also on the financial side of things, very strong year. It's largely dictated by the uncertainty and the unpredictability of sales tax. Very difficult of trying to guess where it's going to be this year. It's very difficult last year at this time to guess where it was. Fortunately, at a favorable last few months of sales tax. This year, I know that the county and anyone in the government finance industry is tracking closely to see where that sales tax is going to ramp up over the next couple of months as they get closer to passing the budget this fall. That concludes the formal presentation. Be happy to handle any questions or discuss any items of concern. Should you have any questions as you're reviewing the material that are distributed, my contact information as well as Charles is included in the last slide of the presentation, which will be distributed to all of you. So if there's any questions, be happy to answer.
Any questions regarding the levy? Great. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of you for hiring our firm. It's always a pleasure working with your group here.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to our resolutions. First up is highway with Mr. Don Chambers. And it's a resolution declaring the intent of St. Lawrence County Board of Legislators to act as lead agency for the Lazy River Road Bridge replacement project. PIN number 7753.32. Moved by Mr. Denise, second by Mr. James.
Yes. Thank you. This resolution basically is to satisfy our seeker determination. We are doing a full environmental assessment on this project, which has been included in the packet or on Google Drive, excuse me, for review. The project will be a slight realignment of one abutment on the downstream side of this structure. And we have already concluded our archaeology study, and we'll be doing freshwater mussel surveys in the future as well. So this document is necessary to move this federal aid project forward. And we don't see where we will have any adverse impact on the environment.
Any questions, Mr. Chambers? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Next resolution we have does not have any numbers in, but we move the resolution, we can add those amendments to the numbers. Moved by Mr. Forsythe, second by Mr. Curran and Mr. Denisha. Mr. Chambers, if you'd like to put the numbers in the appropriate spots and speak to that, please.
Absolutely. This is for a camera system for the outposts and new outpost buildings in Lisbon, Russell, and Potsdam. The apparent low bidder is Barclay Safe and Lock for $15,858.12. The increase in appropriations will be $5,286 for the first two lines in the decrease appropriations, and the third line will be $5,287. The increase in appropriations will be corresponding to that as well. 5,286, 5,286, and 5,287.
Okay. Rebecca's handing it out to the legislators. When the resolution was developed, the bids were coming in Wednesday afternoon, so we didn't have them in front of us at pre-finance. So we'll wait till everybody has them in front of them. Take a look. Don, in pre-committee, we talked about how the data was going to be collected. We spoke about maybe being able to access dispatch. Did you get a chance to ask any questions about that?
That is possible. Yes. It shouldn't be an issue. So the video, we do have high-speed internet at all three locations. or will at the Potsdam location as well, where we will be able to transmit data to the dispatch center to get the video messages there. The system is designed to turn on when there is motion detection.
Are there any questions as to the numbers or the bids? Everybody had enough time to look at it? Okay. Any questions, Mr. Chambers, concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Our next resolution is authorizing the chair to sign the contract for fuel management system in the Lisbon, Russell, and Potsdam outposts. Moved by Ms. Kern, second by Mr. Spitters, Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Chambers.
Yes. I don't know if you have the numbers in front of you or the vendor, but the vendor is MJDNY LLC, Dock Tour Environmental, for a bid of $178,190. The decrease of appropriations will be $59,397, $59,397, and $59,396. The corresponding increases will be the same as that.
Okay.
The funds are available within the budget for this project, or these three projects, excuse me.
Okay, Legislator Denisha has a question or comment. Mr. Denisha.
Mr. Chambers, the MJDNY LLC is the Dock Tour Environmental. Is that a Jefferson County firm?
It is. Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other, Mr. Perkins?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Don, can you tell me what fuel management system actually entails?
Absolutely. As we have at our Canton office right now, we have a fuel system that is only allows the fuel to be pumped when a fuel fob is scanned, a pin is put in to the system at the fuel pump, and the mileage of the vehicle is recorded. So it's the system monitors the vehicle, the person actually pumping the fuel, and helps us keep track of the mileage for maintenance and other things that we need for reporting, not only for the Department of Highways, but many of our departments, some of our agencies, and even we sell fuel like to the bus system. So we can in turn bill those departments. So having a fuel management system is crucial to proper record keeping and billing.
If I may?
Yep.
Thank you. So is this a one-time cost? Or are there service contracts or fees associated yearly?
We do have this system. We're going to be utilizing the same software system that we have at the highway department at this point. So this is the same data system that we're currently using, and that does have a annual usage agreement. However, there won't be any additional usage agreement necessary for the additional outposts.
Thank you.
So this is a one-time expenditure.
Any other questions, Mr. Chambers? Mr. Burke?
Is the data entry, is that electronic, or do you have to, do they actually have to type in the mileage in the vehicle?
actually, the fob is scanned, so that loads in what vehicle it is, but the PIN number has to be punched in by the individual. So that's your individual PIN that the person would pick to identify themselves, or actually it's, and then the other is actually the actual mileage that's on the vehicle. So that has to be manually put in. But the computer also will pick up the mileage and whether the mileage is that's been put in is appropriate. So that would flag it if the mileage is out of sequence, so to speak.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Hey, Don, can you get this project updates, please?
Yes, sir. At this point, we are on bridge projects. The Dutton Road Bridge and McCarthy Road Bridge. We are both projects are putting up bridge rail and approach rail. All the paving and most of the finalization work has been completed at this point. So both structures will be open and complete within the next 2 to 3 weeks without any issues. Planning on then moving to a large culvert, bridge style large culvert on County Road 24. And then a week later, we should be looking at County Road 37, just outside of Messina, south of County Road 46. County Road 62, large culvert rehabilitation is underway. The Morristown project, the Ready project, is most of the excavation within the bay is complete at this point, and the project is scheduled for completion and total completion in September. The paving projects are all on schedule. We're about a third of the way done through the recycling process and should be starting the overlays the first full week of August. The Potsdam outpost, the concrete abutments and concrete walls have been placed at this point, and working on the foundations for the new salt storage. So that project is moving forward and should be complete at this point by the end of October. We are planning a recycling transfer station, and we will get into that here a little bit with the seeker information coming up in the next phase, but that is a project that is tentatively scheduled to go forward as well. So a lot of projects going on. The 10 additional miles that was requested last month has been scheduled with the contractor and is also planned to be done with well within the time allotment for the construction season.
Okay, any highway questions, Mr. Chambers? Okay, we'll move on to the resolutions for solid waste. Our first resolution is declaring the intent of the St. Louis County Board of Legislators to act as lead agency.
Increase fuel and repair expenses for the P1.
Okay, we're gonna do that. All right, so I'll find it down here. Okay, all right. Thank you, Eric. All right, so the resolution is modifying the 2022 Department of Highways budget for increased fuel and repair expenses. So move second by Mr. Kern. Go ahead, Mr. Chambers.
Yes, this resolution is to modify the Department of Highways budget for increased fuel and repair expenditures. I don't think it comes to as any surprise probably to anybody that our fuel and repair costs are up sharply. This resolution does take into account increases in revenue from other departments and will increase the revenue coming in from these other departments and agencies. As you can see, it's our fuel, repair, electricity, heating, almost everything that's energy related. Unfortunately, we've seen a sharp increase in the cost associated with that. Unfortunately, unavoidable that I come forward before the board here asking for an increase in the budget to address these very sharp increases for 2022.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Minelli?
Thank you, Don. Do you expect that we'll be seeing another resolution of this nature before the end of the year, or that what you're anticipating will cover you through the rest of the term?
Well, we may need to see another adjustment later on in the year. It's we're trying to do the best crystal ball we can, but everything is so volatile. I'm hoping that we don't, but I can't promise that we won't be back to discuss the issue.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Always. The first resolution is declaring the intent of the St. Louis County Board of Legislators to act as lead agency for secret assessment of the Ogdensburg Transfer Station Improvements Project at the Ogdensburg Transfer Station in the town of Lisbon, St. Lawrence County. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Smithers. Mr. Chambers.
Yes. The seeker process for the planned recycling transfer station at our recycling transfer station that we have shared plans with the board on. We need to establish the county as lead agency since we will be the ones constructing the project. At least it's advisable for us to be the lead agency. So we will be needing to conduct a full environmental assessment, and which again has been supplied on the Google Drive. But we will be sending out letters to involved agencies such as the town, New York State DEC. DEC will actually be the permit issuer. So the involved agencies would be sent a letter giving them 30 days to respond.
Okay, any questions from Mr. Chambers concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Our next
Thank you.
resolution is that construction of the Ogdensburg Transfer Station Improvements Project at the Ogdensburg Transfer Station in the town of Lisbon, St. Lawrence County, New York, will not result in any significant adverse environmental impact. Moved by Mr. Forsythe, second by Mr. Smithers. Mr. Chambers.
Yes. Again, with this is a seeker, actually a seeker determination. The documents have been filled out and supplied to the legislature for your review. The finding, Barton LaJudas, our consulting engineer, has assisted with the filling out of the forms for this project. And at this point, the paperwork indicates that there will be no significant environmental impact from this proposed recycling transfer station at the existing Ogdensburg / Lisbon transfer station.
Okay, any questions from Mr. Chambers? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
And next resolution is modifying the 2022 solid waste department budget for increased fuel and repair expenses. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Ms. Fiaco and Ms. Hanger. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, thank you. Much like the Department of Highways budget, we are running into energy and repair cost fees that are impacting our budget. However, because this is an enterprise fund and because we do have a contingency account that resides within the department budget. We're proposing using 160,000 out of the solid waste contingency, leaving a little over $20,000 in that contingency account. And also our tipping fees are trending upwards. So we're forecasting actually an increase in our tipping fees that we will get for the collection at the solid waste department. So this proposal would, or this resolution would cover the expenditures all within the operating budget at the solid waste department.
Okay, Mr. Forsythe has a question or comment.
John, I know I brought this up before, but several years ago, when somewhere price of fuel was going through the roof, there was a fuel surcharge applied. Being it is an enterprise fund, has that been considered whatsoever?
Certainly, in putting together the 2023 budget, there will be a need to do, some modifications to the budget to address, the tip fees and such to address that, the increased costs in fuel. At this point, I believe that we are going to not need to use a mid-year adjustment in rates to do that, to cover our expenditures. But certainly, moving forward, it appears that we will most definitely need to adjust our charges to deal with fuel and energy.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Mr. Chambers. Next up, we have our county attorney, Mr. Stephen Button. The first resolution is workers' compensation self-insurance portion for the year 2023. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Sheridan. Mr. Button.
Thank you. I could actually keep this brief, but you know that's not my style, and I want to regale you this evening with success or largely driven by the activities of you and by our treasurer. And you know, our local law from 1956 established that we have the St. Lawrence County Self-Insurance Plan. As part of that local law, we are required to establish an algorithm that shares amongst plan participants the important responsibility associated with the plan every year. In 3 years, we create a formula. And the big change that we had was in 2017. That formula will be revisited again next year. When I came in 2014, we were showing an undiscounted value, means the amount of reserve that's exposed, did not have cash on hand for all of our plan participants, about $40.8 million. That meant the plan shut down tomorrow. Every plan participant would have chucked in money to the value of $40.8 million to cover all of the workers' comp claims that we had sitting out there. As you know, several years ago, the board decided that it wanted to try to strategically target some of our long-term plans. Simultaneously, this board switched to a formula in 2017 that specifically switched to a formula based on experience, on payroll, and on risk. Now, this was slightly different from what we had done from years prior. In years prior, the Ironborn had decided that they wanted to have a formula that had some of the real property taxation values that were included, but in order to go to the industry standard, the board actually decided to adopt that payroll risk experience model. As I indicated, when I came in 2015, they had a report from 2014 showing an undiscounted value of $40.8 million. That was essentially the value of that experience floating out there. It's claimed that it previously been made, but hadn't been paid at that date. In 2017, after you changed the formula, there was a significant change that took place. Between the targeted settlements, structured resolutions associated with claims that were out there, and change in formula, we were able to do some really neat things. If you look back, in 2015, we set our annual apportionment at $4.4 million. That means every plan participant kicked in the value of $4.4 million. You see the resolution in front of you right now. You're down to $3.2 million as the plan value of the plan. Now that tells a fairly minute fraction of the reduction. So in any case, we have $40.8 million discounted value. Of that $40.8 million discounted value, about 17 million of that was the county's responsibility, significant amount. Now, we just received our report associated with closed business from 2021. Our $40.8 million has dropped to $23.5 million on exposure. It's a significant savings, $17 million reduction. In addition of that $23.5 million, which is the discounted value, St. Louis County is responsible for only about $10 million of that. Another significant drop. When you take into consideration that you drop the apportionment for everyone across the board, when you take into consideration you drop the experience, the exposure to all of our plan participants, this is proof positive of the great plan that we brought together and acted by this board. I commend you all for the success that this plan is experiencing. Now, I would be woefully inadequate if I did not thank the treasurer also. The treasurer and the treasury staff have done a yeoman service with respect to our program. They've done it exceedingly well. And that's why this year is another year where we can offer the vast majority of our plan participants a decrease from their year prior portion while continuing to cover. 28 of our plan participants will see a decrease this year. It is our fourth year in a row of decreases for a majority. Once again, evidenced by the change in the formula from 2017. So the resolution you have before you would set rates to 2023 with the expectation that next year we'll continue the progress that we have made collectively and hopefully revisit the formula with my hopes that we keep the formula the way it has been.
Any questions for Mr. Butler? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Our next resolution is authorizing the conveyance of real property known as the Rafton site at 78 Main Street, Town of Herman, to the Town of Herman. Moved by Mr. Denisha, second by Ms. Curran and Mr. Simmons. Thank you, Ms. Buss.
As the board, I believe, is aware, the county has for the last 7 years, really 8 years, targeted environmental contaminated properties as a part of our interim tax foreclosure proceeding under Article 11 of the real property tax law. We go through a process with a team comprised of members from the real property office, from the treasurer's office, and from my office, identifying parcels that are potentially contaminated, that have a prior potential commercial use. We look for those that are tax delinquents after the prospect of being cleaned up. Well, this property just so happened to be a property that wound up on that list. However, as we were looking at the aerial photographs, going through the review, we thought we perhaps need to send someone on the ground to take a look at the property. We sent out someone for real property to take a look at the property and discovered that the structure that used to be seated on this location is now no longer there. The town of Herman has taken steps to actually remediate the property and convert it into a parking lot to serve their recreational area. The town of Herman has reached out to the county asking for the opportunity to make the county whole with respect to the tax delinquency to include the interest penalties fee in exchange for the parcel so that they may have parking for their ball fields there in the town of Herman.
Questions or comments? Ms. Curran?
In the fourth whereas, second line towards the end, it says the Town of Herman.
Certainly. Mr. Denisha?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy with this resolution before us. Spoke to it in executive session a few weeks ago. Again, it's going to be a great benefit to the town of Herman because it is the property is directly adjacent to the recreational field.
passing of this resolution.
Steve, you're recommending no formal charges for them stealing that house that was on there. No. Okay.
The town department has been a model with respect to handling these properties, so we appreciate their help.
Just like to see Larry in handcuffs, just one. Okay, all those in favor of the conveyance of this property, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next up, we have Patrick Kelly of the Industrial Development Agency. And the resolution is approving the issuance of tax exempt revenue bonds by the St. Lawrence County Industrial Development Agency, Civic Development Corporation for St. Lawrence University. Moved by Mr. Burke, second by Mr. Perkins. Mr. Miller.
Good afternoon. We have an $80 million bond issue in front of you. And as you may recall, from when I was here for the St. Lawrence Health Systems and Clarkson bonds, the IRS requires our sponsoring municipality to approve bond issuance in order to make the bonds tax exempt. So before we approve them at the IDA CDC level, we come to the County Board of Legislators for your approval. We've held a public hearing, there was no comment, the law requires a public hearing, and then of course, your approval. This specific project, as I said, is $80 million. About half of it is new financing for building, infrastructure, repair, rehabilitation, work around the campus and on the infrastructure of the physical facility. It's about 1,000-acre campus, so this is no new buildings, but ongoing work to maintain and improve the campus itself. And about half of it is a refinancing of 2012 bond issuance by the IDA CDC, which was for similar purposes. And if you go back through the chain of bonds and refinancing, you get to academic buildings, athletic facilities, student housing. So it's a fairly typical college bond issue. In terms of economic impact, St. Lawrence University has approximately 750 full-time equivalent employees. They have about 2,300 enrolled students, over half of whom are from out of New York State. So when you're talking about economic impact, obviously, this is a key economic generator for the county. The Center for Governmental Research issues reports on the impacts of colleges and universities periodically. The latest information we have is from 2019, and they say SLU's impact in the region is about $300 million, of which about 25 million is direct and indirect spending driven by students, parents, visitors, potential applicants. The says that you approve references supporting those industries that they would either sell products out of the area and bring money in, or institutions that bring people to the area to spend money and to be part of our economy. Obviously, a university fits that bill. The question about the role of this process, I want to make something perfectly clear that we are not lending St. Lawrence University $80 million. We are not guaranteeing $80 million. You are not guaranteeing $80 million. This is not a credit. It is not underwriting. It is not a lending scenario. It is a required step by the IRS to improve the tax exempt status of the debt. What that means is we issue bonds, which then are in turn marketed and sold in the financial markets, in this case by Morgan Stanley. The holders of the bonds, who in fact are the lenders, then do not have to pay income tax on their interest earnings. So in turn, that enables them to take a lower rate, which gives St. Lawrence lower debt service. So we together are supporting SLU with 750 employees and the economic impact by giving them the most competitive and advantageous avenue for financing for things like campus infrastructure, buildings, things to entice students to come here and do the things we want students to do while they're here. The landscape that people are aware of COVID, the impact on colleges and universities. There's 4,000 different places in the United States that we can go for college or university education, online education. There's over 25,000 institutions around the world. It is a competitive landscape. Our view is that whatever we can do to help St. Lawrence and Carson and the other colleges in the county to have ways to be competitive, to positioned well to bring students here and to succeed. We support doing it, and I ask that you do that tonight by opening this resolution.
Any questions to Mr. Kelly? Mr. Lightfoot?
At the resolution, says that whereas pursuant to section blah, 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 the Board of Legislators desires to allow the interest on the bonds to be excludable from gross income for federal tax purposes. What other taxes would St. Lawrence University be able to avoid, if any, with this, us passing the resolution and them selling bonds?
Well, they're not avoiding any taxes. It's the holders of the bonds who are earning interest on the money that St. Lawrence is paying.
Right.
So depending on where that entity is located, it's New York State income taxes would be exempt as well.
My particular interest would be in sales tax. Putting together this kind of job and reading this resolution, there's a lot of maintenance, repairs, new equipment, all kinds of things in any number of buildings, probably all of them. My concern is the St. Lawrence University pay sales tax on those purchases?
No, and this has no impact
And that's what
whatsoever.
I wanted to hear, either did or did not.
They do not, and that they are tax exempt by their 501c3 for New York State purposes. They would not pay income tax on those materials with or without you approving this bond.
Okay. So there are no other tax implications to this other than to the bondholder.
Correct.
Ms. Curran?
So how old is the other debt that's being pulled into this?
2012. Yep.
So roughly, according to what they gave, they collect about $218 million a year. Should they be able to pay off the 10-year bond, like when is it actually paid for?
Can you say that again?
So if you're collecting around $218 million in tuition each year, how big was the bond that they took out in 2012?
It was about 40 million. And what they are doing is they are taking advantage of the interest rates available in the market right now to secure a more advantageous rate scenario. Like anybody who finances the house.
Mr. Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think a couple of points that we ought to think about here is, I think it's a terrific thing that St. Lawrence University is going to invest all of this money into modernizing and upgrading their campus. Anyone who's visited college is aware that they've got a lot of older buildings, they've got a lot of historic buildings, and anyone who is familiar with those is aware that they need a lot of maintenance, they need a great deal of love and care in order to continue using them in this day and age. And St. Lawrence University deserves a great deal of credit for taking and keeping these historic buildings and keeping them vibrant and keeping them in use. And 750 employees and several thousand students and their families being brought into the county has a huge economic impact throughout the entire county. Probably just about every community in this county has people who are employed by St. Lawrence University or by some of the contractors and vendors who are employed there. And having the university continue to make these large investments into their future is helping to put a lot of companies throughout St. Lawrence County to work. You know, whether it's the guys who are painting the halls, working on the plumbing, working on the renovation projects, the $40 million of this is going to go into our economy and help put a lot of people to work and keep St. Lawrence University as an institution that's going to continue attracting large numbers of individuals to come to St. Lawrence County, visit St. Lawrence County, stay in St. Lawrence County, discover what we have to offer here in St. Lawrence County, and the spillover effects are humongous for our business community. So I just appreciate, Patrick, the efforts of your staff to working with the college and helping to keep them as a vibrant employer here in the county.
Mr. Denisha.
Couple questions. What's the total dollar amount of centers universities in Dallas, you know?
The total investment of the university is a little bit shy of 400 million.
Okay. Sorry. go ahead. Yep.
I know you mentioned, I certainly appreciate the St. Lawrence's here and all the opportunities that they provide. We speak about 750 employees, and that's a lot of folks. But I also want to point out that at St. Lawrence University, like the other universities, they're 501c3, they're exempt from a lot of taxes. And I want to point out that Alcoa was not a 501c3. They pay taxes. Reynolds pay taxes. General Motors pay taxes. Corning pays taxes. Significant taxes. It's I just find it ironic, I guess, that if we've got an institution that's got such a huge balance, the board of $40 million in 2012, which was 10 years ago, want to refinance some portion of that. We have industries that are no longer here. I think probably part of it is taxes. It just doesn't seem like a level playing field.
Mr. Forsythe.
Can't argue that statement there at all. What's your percentage of this each time, roughly?
Probably about $500,000.
In Syracuse, they addressed this at one time. I think they did with some of these large not-for-profits that don't pay any property tax, and worked out negotiated pilot, I believe is what they did. We've never pursued that. I guess I don't even know how they accomplished it, but they did get some with St. Joe's, I believe, pitched in some, and I think Syracuse University pitched in. But, has there ever been a conversation about that? You know?
I have not been part of it. There may have been one at the local level, there may have been conversations like that. Now, I'll point out, you're correct there, in terms of there's tax status. That's true of all our competitors as well. For the most part, overall. When a kid's making a decision between St. Lawrence and UVM or St. Lawrence and Hamilton, those advantages are across that industry. That's maybe it's a philosophical question about how that tax system works, but I think for us, in light of the impact that it brings here, and the workers and those who spend money when they're here in the county certainly contribute to the strength of the tax base. It's just something I would.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carried. One no, student deletion, okay. All right, thanks, Patrick. I will, yes, thank you. Next up, emergency services, with Mr. Matt Benner, and that resolution is authorizing the chair to sign contract. LDV, custom specialty vehicle, for the purchase of a replacement mobile command center and modifying the 2022 budget of emergency services. Moved by Mr. Smithers, second by Mr. Kerman. Mr. Benner.
Good evening, everybody. This resolution that's here before you this evening is to replace our 2008 Winnebago that's currently our unified command vehicle, which we are known as UCV-1. This has been deployed over the years since 2008. A lot of our major incidents, emergencies, fire investigations that's happened, including large-scale events, public events that go on. Recently, with COVID-19, it's also been used as a max vaccine clinic. Over the last couple of years, we've seen great deterioration in the vehicle. Just recently, about 6 weeks ago, we lost the complete brake system from the brake lines all the way down to the calipers and everything else. We had to have it towed down to highway. And our highway garage is kind of urging us that they don't think it's going to last another 2 years. So we actively been looking for its replacement. We did find this replacement that looks like a great fit. This was a committee put together from Emergency Services, Public Health, and the Sheriff's Office. They've met several times on speccing out what good details, what each agency would need for this vehicle. This is an HGAC vehicle, which we do have a resolution that was signed back in 2014, agreeing that we can take public safety, public emergency vehicles and equipment off this procurement option. The Sheriff's Office is putting in 4%, which is $27,904. Public Health has a grant which is going to pay 80% of it, which is $511,735, and the other $100,000 will be coming from our ARPA funds.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Denner? Mr. Smithers?
Do you have an anticipated delivery date if this is approved?
Part of this whole process is we'd have to have a signed contract by beginning next month to be able to take delivery by March. We would have to take delivery by March to use the grant that Public Health is putting towards this.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Berg?
Matt, is there like a spec sheet that you can share with us that you would know all the bells and whistles?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a diagram. Yep, we have a diagram of the vehicle and we have a list of the specs that go along with it that I can share with all of you.
I think it's good you're updating, but it's nice to know what you can do.
We do have a waiting list established in our office, a scheduled calendar of events that all agencies have requested this vehicle. The one currently in use and its replacement. So it's used so much that people are calling up booking it.
Okay. Ms. Curran?
We were fortunate enough to have you guys bring it to our propane emergency a few months back in Louisville when the fire department was there all night with a bunch of other agencies. So we thank you for that, but it's time for it to have something else. That's the careful issue.
Mr. Lightfoot?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to replace the old iron. My question would be, does the cost that is in the resolution include outfitting it with whatever equipment is needed, computer equipment, radio equipment, things like that?
Yeah, the radios are not coming with it. Everything, the power for the radios, the chases for the antennas and the antenna lines, all the computer plugs down to the switches. We'll be using county already owned laptops as each individual department has to use inside of it. We do have a mobile unit that we can use for internet, but the only thing it comes with TV monitors that they're all hooked up, some outside, some inside. The only thing we would have to outfit it with would be radios, which we do have grant funds that could take care of that.
Any idea what the outlay for radios would be?
Well, that's the catch 22. We want to put radios in it when it comes, but we want to put a radio in it that we'd be able to use with the new radio system we're looking at going to. So we are looking at a multi-band radio, VHF, UHF. So if it does get deployed to any emergencies close to our bordering counties, we'd have intercommunications with those counties.
So that's equipment that would have to be purchased, correct?
Correct, just the radios. Yes, correct.
So do you have an estimate of what that would cost?
We do not. They're about 8,000, 9,000 a piece. The radios are.
All right, so does that mean you're only going to put one in there?
I don't know what we're going to put in there yet. Currently, we see in order to set it up for dispatch stations, it's going to be more than one radio. So I'm going to guess and say maybe 3 or 4, depending on how far we want to go with it.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Thank you, man.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor of the resolution, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Matt, I have a question for you. Are you still there? You lost. There it is. Okay. Before I had a comment or question.
When I was reading our company now earlier, I saw them phone systems down and they're being urged to utilize 911. I know you were involved with the city of Ironborn and their dispatching 911 in the test run. Can you give me your estimation when it may be able to transition over with the updates to the building and everything else?
I wasn't aware of the phones being down in Messina until this afternoon when one of my staff showed me the article. Actually had to call and give them the correct number to republish. The number that they had is our admin office out back. That will not reach the dispatch center, so we had to call and do that placement. But we weren't aware about that article at all until later this afternoon. As for Ogdensburg's had the same situation happen to them a couple of times, even during the weekend, which we did step up and do everything we can for them, just like we would any other PD. As for estimated for dispatching, I know there's some emails going back and forth currently, but we don't have an estimated date yet to start doing that.
A year, 2 years?
So Ruth, would like to answer.
So I've been working with Matt as well as he's working with the dispatch staff. I think we have a plan that started out a long time ago with the pilot relative to the overnight. I think that can happen sooner. I think the busier times are the day and evening shifts, as everyone is aware. Our update should be done in the fall or early winter next year, by the new dispatch center, should the board approve all those actions. So in that situation, there'll be 6 dispatch stations, and we aren't as concerned as we are with the one.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. I think that's it for you.
Anytime, thank you.
Next up, Sheriff's Office, Under Sheriff Sean O'Brien is with us. The resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with National Power Corporation with the Sheriff's Office. Moved by Mr. Burke, seconded by Ms. Curran. Go ahead, Mr. O'Brien.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to, so this is a agreement that we would look to have with Niagara Mohawk. I know some of you, myself included, is why isn't this with National Grid? This is actually the company that they deal with as far as installing this type of equipment on these power poles. So we've already followed up on that, but this is basically in the event that we need necessary equipment loaded on a pole, we're just asking that the chair authorize us to do so.
Okay. Any questions for Under Sheriff O'Brien? Mr. Perkins.
Thank you. What type of equipment would you be utilizing?
So it'd be probably law enforcement sensitive equipment. When we have sensitive investigations, there's certain things that need power, and this would enable us to be able to operate that given the chair's signature.
Good answer. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions concerning the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a resolution for community services that was tabled to finance. That resolution is modifying the 2022 budget for community services for the local lieutenant staffing agency contract. In motion to move from the table made by Mr. Burke, second by Mr. Lightfoot. All those in favor of bringing this off the table, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, so we have Mr. Ulrich. Jay, can you speak to the resolution, please?
Yeah, we have a nurse practitioner, psychiatric nurse practitioner that has resigned from a position in the mental health clinic. And she had a caseload of 250 clients. And so we're trying to put a stopgap measure in place through locum tenens so that we can continue to provide services for these individuals. In addition to my contact with locum tenens, I've reached out to SUNY Upstate, has psychiatric services that we contracted through before, and I'm awaiting, a word in terms of their availability and their price point for these same services. But in any event, we were trying to move money from the 100 direct services to the 400s contractual in order to fill this gap.
Okay. Questions for Ms. Kerner?
I think with the short notice that Jamie given with his provider was part, I think there's no workaround after talking to many things but this. I don't know if we need to amend this resolution to include the Syracuse, that I would offer an amendment in the fourth whereas to add the Syracuse University or Syracuse update agencies that they work with. I'm sorry, I don't have the name off the top of my head, but to add that as another option for them to hire from.
Okay, is there a second to this amendment? Second by Mr. Terminelli and Mr. Perkins. Discussion on the amendment.
I think it's just going to be very difficult to find anybody.
Mr. Berger.
So the amendment would allow Jay to fill it either or.
That's correct. Okay. Correct. All those in favor of the amendments to the resolution, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, so we have the amended resolution in front of us. Any continual discussion about that? Mr. Terminelli.
I just want to say that I hope this evening that we're able to pass this resolution. I know that looking at the cost, it can be breathtaking to think about that, but there are 250 people that are relying on us to provide continuity of care. And unfortunately, somebody departing unexpectedly into this institution, but we can't, we owe it to these individuals to make sure that they are able to continue filling their appointment.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I would just say that I concur. Any, all those in favor of the resolution as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay. So we'll move on to the treasurer, Renee Cole. That resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Allpaid Incorporated to provide credit card services to St. Lawrence County Park. Moved by Mr. Smithers, second by Mr. Burns. Cole.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Allpaid to provide credit card services to all county departments, including the ability to accept online payments. Last month, Human Resources requested my office assistance in getting them set up with Allpaid, because this is the vendor that works with the software that the Human Resource Department will be utilizing or is utilizing to accept online civil service applications. Currently, solid waste uses Allpaid, I think since 2019. This resolution will provide a blanket authorization for county departments to use it should the situation arise where they can accept online payments and provide another option to taxpayers. The fee is, there is no fee to the county. It's passed on to the customer. For the HR purposes, the fee looks like it is 2.95% or a minimum fee of $1, which I believe it will end up being $1 for the civil service test applications.
Okay. Any questions for Mrs. Cole? Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if you know or not, but in solid waste, there was an issue because the machines there didn't accept the chips. Is that rolled out yet? Or will that be included in this? You know?
For the purpose that, for human resources, how they will be utilizing it, that won't be an issue because it's just so that they'll be able to complete their civil service applications and submit payment online. So there won't be a physical card there. I believe Don Chambers talked a little bit at pre-committee about that they're still trying to work out the issues they have at solid waste.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The next resolution is authorizing the creation of a blighted residential property reserve account. Moved by Mr. Denisha, second by Ms. Curran. Great. Go ahead, Renee, if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. So I believe this resolution does a good job of laying out this request. As part of our annual review of parcels for the foreclosure auctions, we, meaning the St. Lawrence County Tax Foreclosure Team, which consists of staff from my office as well as the Real Property Office and the County Attorney's Office, we consistently identify parcels that come up, that come in with significant deterioration and some are even condemned. Some facts on that are in here, but I'll read them. For this year's auction, for the upcoming 22 auction, the County Tax Foreclosure Team identified 29 parcels as poor or condemned. 7 of the 29 were withdrawn or severed from the auction. 4 of those 7 were sold at prior foreclosure auctions and ended up back in our hands again. So the value of the outstanding June taxes on the 29 parcels was approximately $283,000. The 7 that were withdrawn, those 7 parcels alone were $90,788. So it's serious money. We pay for it. The county, that we make the municipalities whole on that. So creation of this reserve would allow the county to target these blighted properties, returning them to the tax rolls and making an investment in improving our communities and ultimately decreasing the liabilities and expenses the county continues to make in making our municipalities whole.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Denisha?
Not a question, Mr. Chairman, but just a comment. I think this is a great first step. As everyone knows, there are a number of blighted properties, big municipality and county. Well, in many cases, most cases, it's still being assessed. Tax are being paid. So it's probably county, all the county taxpayers.
Good job. Anyone else? Mr. Lightfoot?
Renee, is it not so that these condemned properties, we're still paying what the tax value is to the towns and villages, much like we do with a property that is actually in use and productive?
We do. Our only other option with these would be for the board to take them off the tax rolls. So we're either paying the taxes or we have to take them off the rolls.
So since I've been here, I don't recall that we've ever taken somebody off the roll. And I think that, if I'm wrong, I have to stand corrected. But I think that something that's condemned, it seems like we are wasting other taxpayers' money by providing the value of what we are not getting to the town. And I think that, at least, my point of view is, if we have properties like that out there that are condemned, that don't move, then I think that this board will take action and remove them from the roads.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Mr.
Kevin?
Forsythe. Oh, I'm sorry, Renee. Go ahead.
I was just going, before you moved on, could I just have a minute? I have a couple of facts, just some information on the upcoming auction to share.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Just a very brief rundown, and to mention that the bank rec summary reports are on Google Drive, and that I will apologize now. I have not sent the final quarter sales tax, and I'll do that shortly to you. And that just the rundown as of today, we have 113 properties scheduled to go on the auction. It's a little lower than usual. We've had a lot of turnover in title searchers in my office. In addition to COVID, we had an 8-week shutdown without any title searchers working in addition to that. But so it's a little lighter than usual. In addition to that, Surrogate Court was closed up for about a year, and we weren't able to access a lot of records that we needed. That's changed. So we'll see how that goes. The auction will be held September 10th and will start closing on September 24th. The last day for prior owners to redeem their property to avoid the tax sale auction is August 11th. The property list will be available on August 12th at auctionsinternational.com under real estate. Auction booklets will be available by August 22nd online and in our office, and municipalities will each be sent one courtesy booklet. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you. Renee, a question regarding the additional 0.5% the city of Ironborn receives.
Yes.
Hopefully we're supposed to do it on a quarterly basis. When does that start? When are the quarter dates? And can you give us any tracking of how they did, at least on the first quarter?
I will be able to do that, yes. And the quarter dates are the same as they are for all the municipalities. So we'll be sending out those payments. We're going to do a special check run next Friday so that we have it in the mail by the 5th of the month, which is when we send them.
So which months are the quarterly payments now?
February, if I have it right, I don't have it in front of me. So we send them in August, November, February, and May.
And you'll have that shortly?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions for Renee? Okay, I think we're all set, Renee. Thank you. Okay. So our next resolution is brought to you by Margaret Haggard. Margaret, would you read the resolution, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, thank you. I offer a resolution urging the state of New York to eliminate the requirement of DOT Code 75 for fiber optic facilities and infrastructure, and I move for its adoption.
Is there a second? Second by Suzanne Bianco and Nicole Tribunelli. Mrs. Haggard, we'd like to speak to your resolution, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for encouraging us, the committee, to bring this forward. I appreciate that. It has been discussed. As we know, some of the DOT fees were eliminated to urge or entice people to provide internet service for particularly rural areas that are unserved. Unfortunately, this has not been addressed, and it costs up to $15,000 per mile for ISPs, internet service providers. And that impedes enticing internet service providers to come up here and do the work that we need. And I would ask that everyone support this because we're all on board. This has been a very concerted effort by the committee to get this going. And I think that this is something that we can do, making the state aware that this is still out there. furthermore, the resolution suggests that they take a hard look at everything that needs to be impediment to getting bond out there. And again, thank you, Mr. Akers, for suggesting this.
Any questions for Mrs. Haggard? Mrs. Stern? Mr. Stern?
I would just like to be added.
Anyone else? Mr. Burley?
Are we looking at, I'm not, I think it's great. We gotta ask the state to negotiate with them. They give up the speed. When they negotiate, it's on their own connected.
It's not in the language of the body of the resolution itself. I know it's been part of some legislative agendas. I can't remember specifically if we addressed this to our legislative agenda or not.
We did, but not, I think, to that extent.
That's specific.
Yeah.
Mrs. Haggard, do you know if the $15,000 is a one-time fee? Is there not annual leasing
I
fees
don't
also?
know the answer to that, but I know that we have to hire an independent contractor to come out and do this. It's not true for other projects, it's only for fire. And I appreciate Mr. Burke's suggestion. I'm volunteer to go to home.
Excellent. Okay, anyone else? All those in favor of the resolution, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Haggard. Now we'll move on to vacancy review. Mrs. Doyle.
So I reviewed the summary with you at last week's meeting. We have the remaining four departments. Before you tonight, the first one is involved and create from highway. I believe Don is with us.
Yes, yes, this first vacancy is to create a heavy equipment operator instructor and abolish a vacant assistant civil engineer position. The reason for this move to an instructor within the department is the federal government now requires basically any on-the-job training so that program be certified by the federal government. And we would need to have a certified instructor within the department to do so in order to train individuals now. So the Department of Highways, if this goes forward, I would plan on having this trainer trained in this program so that the Department of Highways could become a certified training facility to train future and existing department employees. For example, if a person now at the department has a Class B CDL, which is only a standard truck, not a tractor trailer truck, and they want to go to a Class A. In the past, we could simply provide them training and allow them to take a test on a tractor trailer and they could obtain their Class A. Now, the applicant would need to go through approximately 200 hours of certified training to modify their license or obtain a Class B or A in the first instance. So with the change in regulation and the change in the job market, I think it's imperative that we make these changes within the department to comply with the changing world around us, I guess.
Questions, Mr. Chambers? Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the solid waste heavy equipment operator, Mr. Chambers.
Yes, thank you. Within the solid waste department, we do have, this is also an abolish create. We have two temporary sanitary landfill attendant positions. The attendant position is basically a minimum wage job. and we have received 0 applicants for this position for the last couple years. It's obvious that this position cannot be filled with our current pay, I believe in the $13 range. And proposing to change this to a permanent heavy equipment operator with the changes coming in the recycling and program in the coming year. And also with folks on military and extended leaves. I believe that is important that we make this transition to a permanent heavy equipment operator.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Chambers? We're all set, Don. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
The next item this evening is the fill of the superintendent of buildings and grounds. The board provided us with latitude, and we looked at a couple of different structures with the intentions of having an overlap between a well-noticed retirement and an individual coming in, while there was also retirement in the second position, if you will, the understudy of the superintendent earlier in the year. And so we looked at a couple different configurations. We want to move the superintendent into the temporary position. We had to consider all the employment, enrollment, and retirement concerns associated with that. So we conducted a search. We then conducted a second search, and we're fortunate to get in a temporary capacity at first. Jim Trappin has taken over as superintendent of buildings and grounds. Dale Grant retired June 28th, and so we celebrated with him on his last day. And we're able to look forward now to moving Jim from the temporary position. They had just about a week and a half overlap into the permanent position. So I don't think that question ever was whether or not we would have a superintendent. What we were really hoping to do was get some boots on the ground before the retirement took place.
Yeah, any questions concerning this position? It's like, okay.
And the last position this evening, I believe Pam Lewis is with us, is for the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Positions that you may recall, these are federally funded positions, but they are county employees. And this position is for the Assistant Accounting Supervisor. Hi, Pam.
Hello.
Go ahead.
So yes, we were requesting to fill the Assistant Accounting Supervisor position that was left vacant when Penny Taylor took a promotional opportunity. The position is the supervisor for the WIOA staff at the One Stop Career Center and is responsible for the fiscal aspects of the WIOA program, which can be a complex system and requires a high level of knowledge of procedures and operations. Being that it is a federally funded program that is run through the New York State Department of Labor, we have both federal, state, and local oversight that has to be met, which is a big part of what this position will entail. And it requires the ability to develop effective and working relationships with subordinates, as well as other contacts to accurately be able to meet all the requirements of the New York State Department of Labor. Failure to fill this position could result in delayed cash flow, recapture of funds, disallowed costs, and having to return money to the New York State Department of Labor.
Just from the standpoint of the department structure and staff available. So the individual in this position stayed with the county. She promoted into the social services accounting supervisor position. So she is also going to be allocated a portion of her time to train the person coming in. You may also recall a couple of months ago, there was a vacancy in the principal account clerk position, which was just behind this assistant accounting supervisor, and that was abolished and a senior account clerk created in its place. So I believe that we have some candidates for that position who would provide assistance to the assistant accounting supervisor. So we'll keep you posted on that field as well.
Questions?
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next up is American Rescue Plan Act, information update session.
So a couple of items, I wanted to give you an update, beginning of the month. City of Canton held an announcement for their daycare program development using the funds provided by the American Rescue Plan Fund. So there's a great partnership that's established and set for fall enrollment. I believe they have between 10 and 13 spots available. And as you know, the goal of the program is to create additional spots for children in daycare. So we're going to continue to monitor their progress. The IDA is going to assist us with implementation of that program. Also wanted to give you an update on the Emerald Ash Borer tree removal and reforestation. So we have met with Soil and Water Conservation District twice now. They have refined their map. They have scaled it to the timeline associated with the American Rescue Plan funds. We are looking at a couple of different constructs between either the county maintaining the funding and running through soil and water, or turning those funds over to soil and water. So they are looking at a couple of different models. Consideration of the vendors available to tackle a project of this size and scope, certainly a consideration, as well as the time, both in that we have to use these funds as well as the ground need to cover. I think one of the things that you'll see come out of this is not only a good start to tree removal for this and reforestation in a maybe less traditional way, because we're also looking at some areas that may need additional attention for soil erosion and needs attention rather than immediate replacement in the right of way near the roadways, which is where these removals would take place. So a number of different conversations I think that are well timed for the good start in these funds, but also a longer term consideration of the county's role and an annual appropriation associated with continuing forward beyond where the 900,000 will go. So we've been able to begin that conversation and hope to bring you an update and resolution next month to be able to address this. Also wanted to let you know that the contract we do have in place, so the Dunmore and San Luis County Fair at this time. We've arranged following the board meeting next week to have a tour of the area where the work is being completed. Wanted to make sure that you were aware, I thought we had mentioned it, but perhaps not, that we have at this point received the balance of the funds related to it. So the 10.4, the second tranche, they call it, has arrived. And this week we're finalizing the contract with Criminal Cooperative Extension that you've already approved, and we'll hopefully get those funds out and turned around as well. The last item under American Rescue Plan tonight is the allocation of the economic development and tourism funds. We've got Patrick Kelly here who will come up and speak to it with us. There are 5 essential categories that we'll speak to: workforce training and development, facility infrastructure improvements, small business, nonprofit assistance, travel, tourism, and hospitality, both promotion and capacity building grants. Patrick?
So should we first? Okay. So the resolution before us is authorizing the chair to sign contracts appropriating American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds for the purpose of economic development and tourism, and modifying the 2022 budget of the county administrator's office. Moved by Mr. Smithers, seconded by Ms. Curran and Mr. Burke. Okay. Turn it over to Mr. Kelly. You're on.
Thank you, Chairman Akers. We worked with the ARPA committee within the county. We had a couple IDA members involved as well. And Ruth mentioned partnership with the daycare provider program. We tried to incorporate that spirit in the way we present the allocation of waste to use the $2.9 million that we would be administering for this. I say cooperation because we talked with OCs about training, talked with City Canton and the Press Center. They're engaged in our proposal. We work with the chamber very closely. If you read the guidelines, there's a significant amount of attention paid to tourism, travel, and hospitality. So one of the things we wanted to do was make sure that there was a set aside for promoting the industries as well as building them further. So as kind of going to the first order here, the idea of the capacity building grants is ways to make investments in attractions or destinations or facilities that can assist in bringing people here and in helping that industry restore itself and grow. And rambling a little bit, one of the things that I want to make sure people understand, within the guidelines, there are limits to the industries you can help, what you can do, how you present the programs. The key takeaways being you identify a harm, essentially, you develop a response, and then you make sure that there's a proportionality to that response. So there are, we did a very careful reading of the guidelines to lay out a program that we thought would qualify while doing the most good and having the most impact responding to COVID. And I'll also highlight that the program is set up as a response to COVID. It's not meant to be a general economic development program. It's very clear in the guidelines, which is one day, which otherwise, that's the rules. And if we are ever subject to the future audit, we went very carefully through the program guidelines, through the FAQs, through the rule and the rule updates to make sure that what we're proposing fits. And then there will still be a fair amount of case-by-case analysis of applicants and applications to see if the proposed assistance provided fits within the guidelines. So as you can, again, backwards up the chain, with capacity building grants, anything, nearly anything within tourism, travel, and hospitality qualifies for assistance. Promotion, marketing, outside areas, getting people here, getting people to travel, to enjoy the outdoors, all of that qualifies pretty much almost automatically, for the simple way of saying. So the capacity building grants, the promotion, we think are clear fit. The workforce training program, assistance to individuals who are either unemployed, underemployed, households who are impacted. There are a variety of ways to qualify, either an individual or a business to qualify for workforce training. We're comfortable that there's a means of doing that for the money that's allocated. We broke the money down into categories that are also referenced in your resolution. Just 900,000 is a pretty high figure for training, so we wanted to make sure you understood where we see that those training funds being allocated. Some of it is specialized, some of the partners have referenced before, like the $125,000 for healthcare careers, the funding for the heavy operator training, a fair amount of those for general new employee training, existing or incumbent workforce training. The guidelines make the means of qualifying individuals and businesses for those programs pretty straightforward, but we'll still have an application process. They'll still be taxed. We'll try to spread the funding amongst many businesses and individuals as we can. Facility and infrastructure improvements, that's $1 million. There are a list of different improvements, most of them, as you think, related to COVID ventilation, facility layout, efficiency, expansion, incorporating outdoor aspects to businesses, all qualifies. And then there's impacted communities and then disproportionately impacted communities. This is all laid out in the guidelines. There's a list of enumerated responses you can take to individuals, households, or communities, depending on whether they're impacted or disproportionately impacted. And there's probably a handful of census tracts and communities within the county that fit within that disproportionately impacted. Our goal, I would prefer to provide assistance by having someone come and identify or articulate the harm first, and then see what level of response we can provide. I talk about that proportionality. That's true in any economic endeavor. I hate to have a conversation where someone starts with, what can you do? What's the situation? What's the impact? What's going on either with the household or with the business? And then let's see which of the categories is the best fit for moving forward. There is also a $300,000 set aside for small business and nonprofit assistance. If you read the guidelines, that is a pretty clear, if someone can demonstrate impact or harm, that is a funding category. It's fairly easy also to reach. The effort will be in understanding what programs they may have already utilized as an applicant, what programs they didn't utilize, what support they may have gotten from ARPA funding within their own communities. I think our goal, as I think that we know, committee has always been we want to make impact, but we want to also leverage the funding to do the most good. So if there's ways of spending $1 of your ARPA money to bring in another $1 of assistance, we want to investigate those opportunities. And if there's, you know, if this is the third dollar that's solving a $2 problem, that's another issue we're going to have to look at on a case-by-case basis as well, and understand this is not I cannot think of a similar instance in my time where we've ever had this kind of funding at our disposal. I don't mean necessarily the amounts, but this somewhat broad yet categorized and guided funding to provide to the business community, to the nonprofit community, and to impacted workers. At this point, I guess I open up questions about the breakdown or any specifics.
Mr. Miller?
Thank you. Not so much a question about the breakdown. Thank you, Patrick, for that very thorough explanation. I'm just wondering, as we go through the process, if you'll be sharing the different organizations that are utilizing this funding, just so that we can share them across the county to hear how widespread the impact is of this funding.
Yeah, you know, the comprehensive nature of my summary, because what the balance that I'm trying to strike is making sure you're comfortable and aware of where the money's going, so that there's not a constant, can we do this, can we do this, can we do this. On the back end of the reporting, we'll share everything. It's your money, we are administering. And that's, you know, the breakdown. There were 4 or 5 different committee discussions. You know, this we tried to arrive at something that it was going to, you know, give broad support, and that as a county body, you'd be happy with where the money was starting.
Mr.
You mentioned training. How are you going to decide what you're going to train these people to do? What are you gonna, kind of training are you gonna offer me when I walk in there and say, I want to be trained for a job?
There's a range of training that is built in. So there's the question you're asking about, I suspect, is, have you ever thought of home daycare, Joe?
I've got some
Straight
experience.
that from the record.
You say I've got some experience.
There's a range of training. CDLA is in there.
I thought that to be a separate issue, or a separate entity.
Yeah, it's all part of training. Well, you're probably zeroing in on is new worker training or company.
Exactly.
And our biggest challenge right now economically is finding workers for jobs. That is the biggest problem any of our employers is facing. This is a means of helping make investments in individuals that also helps hopefully solve that workforce division problem. So if somebody approaches us and the training opportunity, more than likely we match to another job opportunity.
And as I say, you're going to rely on a provider to at least reach out to you or get in contact with you to let you know we'd be interested in.
Yes and no, yes, but we'll be very active in doing more of the outreach ourselves. And then within the incumbent worker training, if we're dealing with an employer that's making an investment in increase of work, or as somebody who's qualified for a job, and there's an opportunity for them to broaden that skill set, that's the training that we can make with somebody who's already employed. And that's the 2 uses of those funding. Those 2 uses are part of a $600,000 category that we hope is going to address some of the disconnect between available skills and available jobs right now. And we also applied to the EDA, federal EDA, for a Good Jobs Challenge grant for $5.3 million, for which some of this would be a nice first step, but that would really throw a program like that into overdrive. And we are pushing further and further, trying to find either existing workforce or bring workforce to the area. And that's with high school, the the colleges, the world at large. The training mechanism is a way of connecting whatever workers we find with the opportunities that are out there and making imperfect fits, hopefully better ones that result in better situations for the worker. And when you look at the breakdown of the funds, it's a, depending on how you assess an investment, and say 3 workers are trained in how to operate a yogurt filling machine. Is that an investment in workers? Is that an investment in the employer? The way it's broken down, it's roughly 50-50 in where you think the money is going. If you look at all the targeted training and the programs that are clear fits for individuals, it's slightly less than half, and the rest is more small businesses, the nonprofits, and the employer. The small business aspect of it is targeted for employers of 500 people or less. That's from the guidelines, just so people are aware of who fits into who has access.
Mr. Smithers. Question for you would be, are you coordinating with the various chambers of commerce in the county, or the county chamber of commerce, or the colleges? How are you making awareness of this made known to the public?
Yeah, what will happen next is if you approve this at your August meeting, we're gonna have a special purpose website. Guidelines, applications, program information. We'll be doing outreach with our development partners. We're talking with the colleges. The whole tourism section was developed in partnership with the chamber and by extension, the other chambers in the county. You folks to an extent are the best advertising for this money, because I got people calling me, talk to them. Some of them talk to 4 or 5 of them that talk to different representatives out there, and that's keeps ending. The idea is we want to. You have to obligate the money by December of 2024 and is that right? And spend it by 26. The idea is I want to get the money. The impact is going to diminish further and further we get from the height of the pandemic. So we want to get it out there as quickly as we can. And all of those providers you mentioned are going to be part of what we're doing. And we have those relationships as well as with the employers. As we're trying to find places for people to be trained, we're leveraging the relationships we already have. Hopefully.
Mrs. Sager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kelly Minor just made finding out that nothing was going to happen with the signal. It's going to be moved and it's going to be.
I could not hear you. But was it good news that you said?
It was
I sounded
all-
good.
I said I was delighted to see that the St. Lawrence bookstore would remain at St. Lawrence and be expanded with more parking. That was a highlight.
That was funded with IDA bonds initially.
Yes.
People know.
My question is, some of the chambers unfortunately don't belong to the St. Louis County Chamber. I understand they're a great organization. Would they still be eligible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we are administering in partnership with the chamber, the tourism aspects of it. What I mean by that is ultimately we'll be the entity that gets audited. So the fund, making sure that the funding fits the program, we bear that responsibility. But recognizing the chamber is your designated tourism promotion entity, they know that sector better than we do. So we're going to rely on them on promotional activities, funding recommendations. But if there is an entity that is, a non-chamber partner that still wants to utilize funding, there's still an avenue for them to apply for it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Spurgeon's.
Thank you. Patrick, back to the training. We're spending this money on the training. Is there any enticements or requirements to keep them within our county so that we don't train them and have them go elsewhere?
Yeah, within the spirit of the guidelines, as long as they didn't leave the country, it wouldn't matter. It's federal money with the idea of being, this is the federal issue to respond to. The guidelines we have right now is that the new worker will be reimbursed after being on the job for a year. We may look at 6 months for that instead, just in light of the timing of the funding. But the idea is the It's not they're here for 3 weeks or a month, and then they get trained, and then they, within an existing employer situation or a new work hire. As far as somebody going through the daycare, CDLA, or the others, there's really not a mechanism for, I went through this training and now we're going to move to Ohio. There really isn't a clawback means of where you're going to get that money back. It's a good question.
Mr. Donation.
That, in regards to the workforce training and development. And I just heard that. But are we going to be working, are you working with, say, IBEW? We got a number of labor unions that have crunch programs, former equipment.
There's 25,000 in there for what's called, I think, pipeline development. A lot of that is connecting. When you watch someone navigate the training process or the education process, there are absolutely gaps where connecting them with the opportunities through the trades just isn't as strong as you wish. Resources are there. We're going to try to address that as part of the partner and the contacts that will be undertaking and making. Really, if we got that EDA money, that would be we have a much better chance of really making a success in doing something like that. Tying in much more comprehensive opportunities that are out there in the trades. But we are certainly trying to do it.
Okay, anyone else? Well, this fits our goal, committee's goal, and your goal is to actually have these things countywide. Doing the ash trees, the CDLA, the EMTs, the Line Hospital, emergency vehicles, the EMTs, all that stuff is, God, I mean, the challenge would be, Patrick, work was ahead. This is the easy part for you. I appreciate everything you and your IDA members did to come up with this list, and certainly the chamber. There's a good chunk of money for tourism, and these are the experts at it, economic development and tourism, so our two partners there. So I hope that you'll all consider this resolution. Is there any more discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, the next up, we have our county administrator's report. Mrs. Doyle.
So I'll start out with the second quarter report. Just as a follow-on to the audit results presented tonight, I not only want to commend the treasurer's office, but also all departments in the county for their discipline and spending, their careful review of all of their recommendations and decisions. Certainly is of great help that across the state, as you heard from our auditors, sales tax overperformed. But it also allowed for some extraordinary appropriations that exceeded our expectations in things like health insurance. So we also recognize that's not going to last forever. And so in looking at the resolutions you considered tonight, both for highway and solid waste, they had prepared those prior to for June consideration. However, we felt it was important to have the second quarter report in front of you so that you could see how performance is going. I just have a few highlights, and then certainly I'm open to any questions that you may have. You do have on that first, the 2-page summary before we get into the categories. The overall summary, you'll see there are 6 departments. By and large, the same outcome I tell you every time. It's revenue following expenses. Some have delayed submission dates, but in general terms, those are ones we're paying attention to. Working with departments, important that they not only let us know when they send those claims in, whether it's to the federal government or the state, but that they record those as revenue coming in. We may need to do a modest adjustment if in fact they come in a different level, either higher or lower than expected. But we want to make sure that you can see those when they're submitted. So 4 departments, typically we talk about, that require that category review are board of elections, county clerk, real property, and certainly the treasurer. They're revenue heavy at the beginning of the year. So unless you look at the category summary, you don't really see what's happening in the department. So in this review, I've taken a look at their general percentages as it relates to the revenue. The board of elections came in at an average of 24.52%. So when you look at that the revenue is already in at 86, it's hard to tell from the first summary set of information because they're upside down. right? They have more revenue than they have expenses. But it's also important to understand it does cost to run their offices for staffing, for equipment, contractual services. So I believe that's why looking at the category report is important as well. Other areas, I think if we were to look at revenue sides, the expenses in places like community services and even in social services this quarter were lower. Community services, they averaged, I believe it was 32%. Community or social services was 36.67. So when you're looking at their revenue coming in at 40%, normally that would give us pause, but if they're underspending, they're going to claim less in revenue. So I think that ties together some of the revenue questions that you may have had when you look through the reports. I did want to bring up when you look at the county clerk this month, that typically is one of the favorites to take a look at downstate revenue. We're all aware, even if you aren't in the car buying situation, that supply chain has caused dramatic change to how people are buying vehicles and how long it takes to make that acquisition once you've decided you're going to acquire one. So that certainly has also had an impact on downstate registrations coming into the clerk's office. However, when you look at the revenue, I believe if you were to take a look at that, we're only looking at about 9% expended. So they cut back on people staying in to work on the downstate registrations as well. But what we are seeing is an uptick in the clerk's office relative to things like pistol permits and other processing items that have seen changes this year in the law. So what the county clerk is looking to do potentially is utilize some of those appropriations for overtime in the clerk's office to make sure when deadlines come here later on this year, that they've got staff that can keep up with the influx of information coming through. Now, that's not typically an area where we typically spend overtime, but she sees it important this year to make sure staff are available. We're looking at some potential renovations in our space so that more people can be served at any given time. But important to note that they're seeing the uptick in traffic, and they're seeing a little bit of a downturn with the downstate registration. So the hope is over this next year, supply chain will level out. How people are going to acquire vehicles is going to, I think, become a more permanent setup, to be a little bit more predictable. But that's, I think, one of the areas of concern typically is how that revenue is coming in. Also, wanted to mention to you when it comes to overtime, I talked about the county clerk's office, always an interest in how the sheriff's office is performing. They're at about 39% on the criminal side, and they're at about 77.2% on the jail side. You'll remember the sheriff coming in talking about having a mandatory minimum of 56, but only having 40 available to work when the academy was running. We're back up now much closer to 50, but that number still is very difficult to control. So you'll see in the next month's time, potentially too, you'll see that recommendation for contingency funds to come over and pay for their overtime. And that's typically something we make a little further into the year with, but they're watching that and they're being very creative or attempting to get folks scheduled. They have 6 part-timers, I believe, currently. They're looking to fill the rest of those positions as well. I did want to just give you something a little bit outside of the claims on revenue with regards to FEMA, the claim associated with COVID funds. And as you've seen over the last couple of years, the rules have changed. They changed again on July 1st. So everything that we'll be submitting up until July 1st of this year, I actually requested Mr. Zimmerman stay on with us for a little bit longer to complete that claim, and the claim we'll be submitting is for $548,797. That will also include the time he spent helping us out. It's not something that Dylan or I could dedicate time to get done. It's very thorough, has a full knowledge of our budget process, so he's able to help us get that done. So that's certainly unanticipated revenue for this year's budget. I wanted to give you just a quick synopsis. The Health Insurance Committee is going to be getting together this week. We are looking currently at about 2.1 million per month to spend between claims, pharmacy, and all that goes with it. So we will keep you apprised of that, something we're going to be watching very close this year. Also, just wanted to give you a little bit of a read included in that number. Our buyout approximately on a monthly basis is about 20 to 22,000. So that is that goal of the offset. It's not a cost we've always had, but it's something that we're hopeful will mitigate our costs going forward. I did check with Johnny. She indicated we've not seen a claim yet that has exceeded our stop loss coverage, but I'll keep you apprised if we see any changes there. And then there was one last area I want to bring to your attention with regard to an operations resolution.
that you took a look at, the SCAP grant. They are looking at a scenario where approval is required by July 29th. So you won't officially approve the resolution until Monday the 1st. Our concern is if they don't accept it by the 29th, that they won't be able to accept the funds of $9,544. So in the context of all things relative to budget, I wanted to bring that to your attention. My request would be at least some indication from the board that there would be not a concern if we went ahead. It's an electronic approval for acceptance, but the chair will be involved following the approval. But any and all that I put before you, are there any questions relative to quarterly report, to the SCAP grant, or to any information relative to the FEMA plan?
So the FEMA plan of 548, we're submitting that. Will that be accepted? Is that a done deal?
Well, we have on at least 2 rounds, trying to get clarification on what's accepted, what they would challenge, how they would challenge. We know they're very good at it. And so far, we believe that to be acceptable, but we won't know until we submit.
So we can't spend it yet.
We can. And we bring you a resolution if there was an area you would want to identify to have this spent.
Any other questions for Ruth? Okay, so we'll move on to committee reports.
So the other thing I wanted to mention is the board meeting next week will be at the Governor St. Lawrence County Fairgrounds, located at 85 East Barney Street, Governor. And as I mentioned in the Audit report, we will also be taking a tour of the work they're doing with the funds allocated to that.
So we'll move on to the committee reports. First up is Mr. Manisha with Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Chairman, I have nothing to report since our last one, but yeah.
Okay, great. So Fish and Wildlife Management Board, Region 6, Ms. Kerman.
They first took a moment of silence as we lost one of our board members, David Ford, environmental fishing thing. He's been on Fish and Wildlife for. And they had reports on. I think you can look in your email, you will see multiple different things they reported on. There's been changes in everything from how long it should be and how they're going to temperature fees and how many fruit crabs they're going to track. And so with the bear count, the bears are going to take this year. So it's in depth report, and they gave us 3 different sheets, and we have them all in the email.
Okay, thank you. Fisheries Advisory Board, Ms. Terminelli.
I do not have any additional information for my last updates because we meet bi-monthly. It's more nice. It's our meeting.
Thank you. Governor Fair Board, Mr. Smithers.
Nothing too much new other than just a reminder that the headline, Tuesday night is Silver Brown. General admission is $30, reserve is $50. And band day is a Wednesday. Sean Peck looks and he's got 7, maybe 8 bands lined up to be there. Have a popular demolition derbies on Sunday. If you have children or grandchildren that you're planning to take to ride on rides, they open Wednesday at 1 o'clock. There's a pretty good incentive to buy ahead of time wristbands. There's a $10 savings, $25 as opposed to the $35 if you wait till that day. So that's all for now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smithers. You're up next for Highway and Solid Waste.
And nothing in addition to what Mr. Chambers had to say already.
Okay. The IDA, Mr. Rager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The IDA met recently, and most of you are aware that the IDA was awarded a $900,000 grant to improve the railroad access for John Paper and Governor, as well as another, I think, $800,000 to $900,000 grant to improve the railroad access for Alcoa. What a lot of you probably are not aware of is that the IDA has to upfront that money and then wait for the federal government, when it gets around to it, to reimburse them. So when you heard tonight that they were getting a fee from St. Lawrence University, that those kinds of funds make it possible for the IDA to upfront those grants and make those projects possible instead of coming to us and asking us to upfront the money for these projects. So I just wanted to let you know, because people wonder, what are they doing with that money? Well, what they're doing is providing it to help a lot of the economic development projects that they're involved with, as well as loans and other economic development projects here in the county. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Reagan. Recreational Trails Advisory Board, Mr. Arquette.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're having a great season this year. The trails are being ridden heavily. There's a lot of memorial rides and fundraiser rides that are drawing in large crowds of machinery. And I certainly believe a great contributor to the increased sales tax dollars that were just reported a few minutes back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arquette. Next up is the St. Lawrence River Valley Redevelopment Agency, the RVRDA, Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met 2 weeks ago. We approved the updated financials for the RVRDA, I think, from January and CEIP grants. We reviewed the status going back. Some of them we're trying to spread out as much as possible and see if some can do a little bit less, and we should have some answers pretty quickly.
At the end of this week, we can actually.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Forsythe. St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Sagri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I provided to the legislators the detailed update this afternoon, just some highlights. Proposal to the New York State Economic Development Administration Tourism and Partners Supplemental Grant Program. This is the grant funded by ARPA money. The tall sailing ship, and I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce this, now Trinidad in Augsburg, and the establishment of a new event, Old River Festival, celebrate the maritime history of Augsburg and the St. Lawrence River. That's on September 7th to the 11th. And check out the website www.oldriverfest.com for more information. That is going to be great. The Chamber participated in the Hammond Scottish Festival on July 9th. They've also made an application to the RVRA for race equipment to further scale professionalism, safety, and branding of races in the county. They have a promotion going on for summer events called Coming Home, and this is an effort to recruit individuals to move back to the county. And of course, our improvement in broadband will entice them to do that, I'm sure. They were at the Contour Airlines opening, which many of the board members attended. They are working on the Market New York reimbursements for host fees for fishing tournaments. I was delighted to attend the business in the spotlight at JC's River Run Bar and Grill in Waddington on July 21st. Great event that they put on, and the upcoming spotlight being held at the Grass River Hemp/Northern Limits Farm in Canton will be on August 17th from 5 to 7. The next Lunch and Learn webinar will be on August 3rd at noon on workplace wellness. Recruitment of participants for the 22-23 St. Lawrence County Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership is underway. They still are distributing COVID supplies, and they're also working with Fort Drum, including a participation in the Fort's August 4th Career Fair to recruit residents, workforce, and entrepreneurs. That's great. And they have Registration is open for the craft food and wine open air market at the St. Lawrence Power and Equipment Museum in Madrid for September 24th. And a show at Chili Potsdam on December 3rd. The annual dinner for the chamber will be held at the Staples at Windy Point on Wednesday, October 19th at 5:30. And if you're not getting the electronic bulletins, let them know because they're a great resource to finding out what's going on.
Thank you, Mrs. Hager.
Thank you.
Soil Water Conservation District Board of Directors, Mr. Burke.
We met last Thursday and prepared the tentative budget, which up to the point she realized she was getting our funds was good, but needs significant work now. Speaking of the ARPA funds, there are about 14,000 trees that are both ash trees and hazardous trees, non-ash hazardous, that they were looking at. They estimate costs to be somewhere around 1.4 million. An additional $500,000 more than what the ARPA funds are. They have a proposal to do, I believe it's 5 communities within the first year, and then move on funding depending on that going on. Good discussion. It's I think they were delighted to see the ARPA fund, and Kevin pointed out that this is a great asset to our highway department, who might otherwise be faced with all these trees that they have to remove. So anyway, that took up a fair amount of our meeting. Liz Gallup, our secretary of soil and water, is leaving. She goes with the institutional knowledge. They tried, they thought they had replacements, and it lasted less than a day. So it's a challenge to get to the confident people who done. I found it interesting that to do training, they have to pay prevailing wages, which is somewhere around $50. Anyways, there are still funding opportunities available. The water quality improvement program has a total of at least 75 million. It's only open through July 29th. And then no funding is during this passage to barrier removal. That is the application is closed on August 15th. 2022 Empire Field Days, August 2nd, 4th, and Cornell, Marona, Farm Field Day is August 18th. Anything else?
No, the critical piece is 900,000 is a good start for the ash tree removal. We really need another $500,000, and that would include I think it was $87,000 would remove hazardous trees along with that. So as we go along the roadsides, we'll be taking down the ash, but also we'll be taking down hazardous trees, which our county people have been removing. So they'll be there with the bucket trucks, professionals. So you guys are looking towards trying to come up with another $500,000 at some point then for to do the job right. The Scotland County marked out. It was in color coded and it's along the border. Obviously, the ash Dogs have come across from Canada and most of the ash trees in Waddington and throughout are dead. So we'll be looking at some additional funding. Okay. Dave, Forsyth?
Just on that, note, what happens with the trees once they're down?
So the one thing discussed was what they would have to do probably is, one of the options is seeking out the landowner that these right of ways are adjoining. And they would remove the log. So basically, what it would be is the tree would be taken down to actually log length. And the bucket trucks or the trucks for shredding, all that debris would be removed. There wouldn't be anything left in the right of way. And so they would have that option for landowners to take those logs, you know, for plywood. Okay. All right. Okay.
We've been following the Underdog County model, which they've been at, I think, since 2014. And they had a setup where they made arrangements on, I believe, a 2-week window where the landowners could take possession, but that they had to be out of there or they sent the contract back to so that we just didn't end up with more hazards and eventually indefinite by the time not. So we're looking at different options. Certainly we're concerned what ends up happening to it as it continues to go.
So Onondaga and I believe Jefferson County has a full-time person. Is Jefferson County done? Has a full-time person assigned to this task?
Maybe Ruth.
They did Onondaga. We were mixing the two counties. So we have a really good intern that's working for us right now that we're able to extend another 10 weeks or something of that nature. And so I think that we would be looking, this person's interested in hiring this individual. Of course, I think it's a civil service thing. But this is a full-time job. It's, you know, it's all the county. And it's actually really not into the southern part of your neck of the woods, but it's not yet. This is just taking care of the immediate needs. And John mentioned it's about 1,400 trees. And that does encompass some replanting on forest land. I don't think that it will be ash. One of the sticking points would be, at least this is what Onondaga has found, is when you have ash trees that are in somebody's property. It's actually in the county right away, but it's on their lawn. When Onondaga County has agreed to, or they signed a very specific agreement with the landowner that you have to treat that ash. They have to continue to treat it. It's quite a sequence. And so whether or not they agree to do that or follow through, then we have to come back and take that tree. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but this is an intensive process for sure. Right. And, sorry, Mr. Perkins.
So is there any, I guess I'm assuming that there's still emerald ash borers in these trees. So what are we doing to keep them from spreading? I mean, I know you're shredding them, but that's not gonna kill them all. And if they're transporting that, if they're bringing them to the southern part of the county, to my end, I don't want them.
So if you talk to the forester, they're anyway. So that's your option is to treat it. I think less than 1% of the county forest is actually ash. So in regards to the firewood, it would be what you're restricted to now by the DEC. You can't move it more than 50 miles. So we think with the high energy prices that people find a home, whether they sign the document or not. You know. So, but like landowners, adjoining landowners would be given the first option. It would be modeling program, maybe not for a while.
You mentioned treating those trees as a policy they do elsewhere.
So it would be up to the landowner, the homeowner, whatever. They would pay the cost. We didn't discuss the cost. We don't. And you'd actually inject the tree. Because what happens to the bugs is they work from the inside out. So the bulk of these trees are from 6 to 12 inches. Those are the ones that are infected, but also the large ones. And they literally just shatter. You know, cutting down, very dangerous to cut. So that's why you need a bucket truck. You take from the top down. Ms. Stern?
I can tell you that someone paid for a couple of years of trying to treat their ash trees. And success rate is very small and it's pretty costly. And yes, the tree finally came down, just whichever way it wanted to go.
It'll just explode. I do know that when we had a first presentation, that I thought that there must be some trees somewhere that ash trees that have immunity. There are some in China. Because China has had the ash borer before, and some have survived. So we may expect we'll have some. And like, there's still elms around, right? A few elms here and there. So I mean, that was in the 70s. Our road was lined with elms. They all died. Okay, so we'll move on to old new business. To start with the old. Does anyone have any old business? Okay. Does anyone have any? I'm sorry. Go, Mr. New business. Okay.
So I had a constituent who reached out to me to say purchase of property in my district, and they closed down before the tax bills were put out. And then the tax bill ended up going to the old owner and got stuck in the mail. In June, they were notified that they were delinquent in their taxes. Real property had them at that time listed, the owners, however, the credit reduction. The new taxes were still at the name of the full person. And then it kind of caught me tonight when they put the title where people were sort of behind. So I don't know whether or not that is how this happened, but they paid their interest and fee penalties and stuff already, but they are looking to get their $223.42 back. They did their part in closing on time and figured they feel we do worse.
Do you have an answer? Where did they seek redress?
That process can be accomplished by resolution.
So, you want to have a resolution for August? Work that out with the, which you do with real property account treasurer, or you have to verify that it's accurate. Right. You have verification? Okay. So I think draft resolution. Help you out, I'm sure. The specifics.
Thank you very much.
Any other new business? He's foresight.
Mr. Chair, a couple months ago, I reached out to Dylan and inquired about comparative tax rates for all the counties in New York State. And I appreciate Dylan's effort and recent involvement. I started on the task myself, and I realized there was too much of a task bill to try to get it done. But anyway, I found some good help, and I did. Really tweaked it. I think it's on Google Drive now. I think I saw it on Google Drive today. And it compares the tax rate of St. Lawrence County compared to 57 counties in the state, where we rank 45th high. Okay. Also on that sheet, I believe the median income in New York State per county, where we're second from the top in as lowest. Just to put it in comparison, just throwing it out there, last year I brought up, I think property taxes are too high. I still think property taxes are too high. I think that's a good way to evaluate it. And if we're comfortable with that tax rate, knock it down a penny or two each year, that's good. But I'd like to see it 5%. To be 23 budget. So I don't know if I haven't scored the board, but that's what I'm proposing. I tried 10 last year. I thought median 5% would be a good option. So want it out there.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that motion.
Actually, is it a motion?
I'm glad to make a motion. But I like everyone to review it. It's there, review it. You can see it. Feeling, it's hard to compare everything apple to apple, but it's there, and one did his best to get it in comparison review. Just see what you think. I don't have to make a decision today. I just like everyone to see it and be aware of the work that he did on it. And I think it's an eye opener. It's me.
Mrs. Hager?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you doing that. I would say the devil's in the details, as they say. The apples and oranges part of this. For example, in Potsdam, we're 70% exempt because of 2 colleges and a lot of churches and a lot of other properties. And we have to, is there some way to look at the data and put in these mitigating factors, so to speak, because it's really sad that we're so disproportionate, but then again, there must be some other factors that we have to consider.
So would your, just for a second, would your motion be to ask Ruth Doyle to show us a financial scenario with a 5% property tax? Would that be it? And would you second that? So discussion on this motion that's on the floor. This is Haggard and Baker comments. Ms. Curran?
I think that would be. Still have the 8% sales tax. Those taxes that move to 25% seems reasonable, and the county tax would be only part of the effect. So it wouldn't affect any particular town's village or town levy in any way. It would just be ours.
Anyone else? Mr. Ganesh?
Ms. Haggard mentioned that about 70%. It goes back to what I talked about earlier. We've got all these 501(c)(3)s that are not paying any taxes. So it's not a surprise that costs keep going up. You know, and taxes are left for probably 50% of the people. Maybe 60% of the people, 100% of taxes. You know, it's just, I think along with this, there should be, someone mentioned pilots. We did talk about this at one time. You know, just some voluntary agreements with the universities, the tax exempt properties to permit a negotiated portion of the amount that they would pay if they were taxed normally. That would accomplish 5%, probably accomplish more than 5%, a lot more than 5%. So I think this is a whole lot of moving parts to this.
Mr. Liddell?
Yeah, I was going to say very similar comments to what Mr. Ganesh just said. I for sure would support the resolution to just run this number and look at it absolutely. We should always consider all options. But when we were having discussion with Mr. Kelly about pilot agreements, I did a quick Google search and found a report that was done in New York State. It's 10 years old, it was 2012, but New York State, Lawrence County, was one of the highest full tax exempt counties in all of New York State, sliding in at 30 to 40% of all properties in St. Lawrence County are tax exempt. So for sure, you know, here exempting, you have tax exempt properties that burden does fall on the rest of the taxpayers. So I do think, like Mr. Ganesh said, there are many moving parts that we could consider, and maybe looking at, you know, the amount that a decrease would be and how we might get some of the community organizations to maybe agree to support that or do some kind of community give back. And there are many models going on in New York State right now.
Okay, Mr. Burke?
I didn't catch everything that our auditor said. I did hear him say 13.5% or something like that is where is what we've achieved as far as our fund balance. So, and I think we fell short of 15%. And so, I mean, I think move parts have to factor all that in. And I was thinking that we had a good cushion for that listening to him. Feeling differently. The other thing, as far as the universities are concerned, I have a greater concern about big corporation Walmarts. And there's about Bruce Green ran a report a few years ago about the great big corporations, and I think it was maybe 16 or 17 of them equal about 15 to 17% of our tax base. And so when they get their fleet of returns, working on reducing the necessity, and they get it down by the millions, somebody else has to pick up that slack. And that's the part where the taxpayers have to pick that up. So I think it's a really good thing to take a look at and to evaluate the problems with knock down the taxes. But I'd like to think that everybody's paying a fair share. I'm not sure that that's the case with the big corporation.
Anyone else besides, before Mrs. Hager speaks a second time? Mrs. Stubbs.
I'm just gonna remind everybody of the comment of the impact that the colleges have on the county financially. Yes, they have tax exempt properties, but they also benefit the county financially substantially. As Mr. Brooks said, some of these businesses deserve to be looked at. I think it's a little premature to talk about reducing taxes. Personally, I think if we can hold the line on taxes, we're doing great. And to reduce them doesn't make sense to me. Cost of providing services, which is part of what the county does, it's going up, going up, going up, as we talked about. Increasing solid waste and highway, our budget there, they've gone up substantially in their cost. I just don't see how we look at reducing the tax levy. If we can keep it from going up, that'd be amazing.
This is Hager.
I have to go back to last meeting tonight. So we can't stand. I was going to go break that Kerry's comment. Because the chairs basically said what I'm trying to say. I appreciate the fact that it is big corporations. I know Walmart, but they each pie, but they do bring in a lot of money to the community, and I don't want us to be at a disadvantage in competition with the other schools. We want people to be here in those schools.
Anyone else? Mr. Lightfoot.
I'd be in favor of looking at it, but that's about as far as I want to go with it, right now and probably in the near future. I think we've done a commendable job by whittling down, albeit it took a little bit of time to do it, but it took a little bit of time to get where we were also. So I think, like I said, I'll look at anything, but my first thought is that I'm not in favor of reducing it now. I'd like to see it reduced through the budget process, and I think we can do that. The other thing is that if we reduce that by 5%, $100,000 house would save $40 a year in taxes. It doesn't amount to diddly. And I mean, it's a nice thought, and I certainly agree with the goal of getting this tax rate under $8. That's been my goal since I've been here. And if it went less than $8, I'd be happy. Further away from $8 on the downside would make me even happier, but I know that's not going to happen. The other thing is that if we're going to give up, tax money, where are we going to get what the money we are going to lose, assuming that, given sales tax revenues, the forecast is they're going to go down. We're not going to continue to see, the largesse that we've seen for the past couple of years with regard to sales tax. So I think it'd be a poor time to cut it. But there again, I say, I'll look at anything. So I look forward to it.
Okay, anyone else? So I support of the motion for Ruth to look at it. It's a challenge that she can address. We have lower taxes 6 of the last 7 years. The 7th year, we held it constant. I think it's a big hurdle, an unlikely hurdle that we will ever change tax exempt status of churches, universities, and schools. And if you think about St. Lawrence County and what the 5 colleges add to this community, it's a tremendous cultural and just diversity too, which I can support as conservative libertarian. Mr. Lightfoot, you have additional comment?
Yeah, well, not a comment, a request. Along with the information, dropping it down by 5%, I'd like to know a total dollar amount based on our assessed valuation, what that would cost in total dollars.
5% on the $53 million local level would be $2.5 million. Okay. Okay.
So
$2,516,634.
$2.5 million. Thank you.
Renee Cole, go ahead.
Not that I have can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Not that I have a vote in this matter, but I'm probably echoing a little bit of some of the earlier comments here as well. $2.5 million, when you're asking her to look at it, are you asking budget team to try to get through this whole process that takes us 2.5 months and then decide we can't do it? Or are you just asking her to, I guess because it's her and it becomes part of our team's work as well. And a couple of items of note about this. You're also asking her to look at doing that. We just had a resolution from Highway for 600,000 projected changes just for this year's costs alone. I mean, we're on the cusp of a recession if we're not already in it. We have huge inflation and a slowdown in the economy. I guess I understand the desire to cut taxes, but I think this has got to be the worst time to actually think that we could do it and get away with it. That's all I've got.
Okay, we have Mr. Smithers.
I hate to see us waste our employees' time. And to me, that's what we're asking, is a waste of time. This isn't gonna go anywhere. And to put all this time into it, our employees' time is valuable.
Okay, anyone else? Ms. Curran?
I think there's a lot of landowners that San Luis County would have huge interest in us looking at it, whether or not it's a good work. I'd rather have to tell somebody that we looked at it and it's not doable, and we just decided not to.
Okay, Mr. Perkins?
Well, Renee pretty much said what I was going to say. We just had a lot of money that we spent that we didn't expect to spend. Inflation's hitting us. It's going to get worse in the next couple of years. I think we have to be mindful of that. And I don't have a problem looking at it at all, but I do think we have to really watch our P's and Q's for the next couple of years, because the money's not going to be coming in the way it has. We had a good year this past year. That's not going to continue.
Okay, we have Mrs. Haggard again first.
If I may, Mr. Chair, as county administrator, I thought they were going to ask this is Renee's, Mrs. Cole's waiting room. I'd like Ruth to address that because it is consideration.
It will require reduction in services.
Okay, Mr. Lightfoot?
Listen, second grader can figure this out. Okay, it's gonna save a person with $100,000 house $40 a year. Number one, it would drop it down the tax rate to 762, I think it is, per thousand, and it would result in the loss of $2.5 million. What more information do you need than that to make a decision? I changed my mind. I will not support this. And I think it'd be a waste of time to do it.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in full agreement with Joe on this matter. What we're doing is we're taking a usable piece of money, sizable piece of money, and we're whittling it down to an insignificant amount for each property owner. For what? I think I know for what. We are in campaign season, but I think that it's a moot point to even investigate it, in my opinion, at this time. So that's the way I'm leaning, and I hope my colleagues agree with me, and I'd like to bring it to a straw poll. or a vote.
So, okay, so anyone else before I finish my comments? Mr. Perkins?
I think in our legislative agenda, we ought to approach state and talk to them about the tax exemptions. They're extremely high. If we could, I know it would be all new laws, but I think that's something that we should be looking at. Because just about anybody can get a tax exemption.
Okay, so I'll finish my comments and then we'll vote. You know, as long as you're doing the scenario, the power authority doesn't pay taxes on their land, right? How many millions is that? It's a big hurdle to change the tax exempt. I don't believe that's gonna happen for churches or for schools. John was right. Actually, what Liz Mackey said was that the fund balance that our highway funds were actually underfunded. So the true actual fund balance is about 12.2 unallocated. But I still say, Ruth has mentioned there would be less services. That doesn't take the budget process to do it. That will basically, she could come up with what's going to have to be cut. We've gone from 790 employees to 860 positions in the last 4 years also. So, and then for those that are, you know, we make the same argument for $100,000, it's $40. You can make the same argument when it's the tax increase also. And whether it's $8 or $10 for that, it's spread across the board. And the individuals that you serve, that are your constituents, they're paying more for groceries, they're paying more for fuel, their taxes keep going up. If you really want to talk about tax increases, look at your school books, they all passed. And they all went 2-3%, right? The majority of the tax increases. Your school taxes go up every year. People continue to support it. So if you want to look at where you need to be cutting, consolidating, and being smarter about your educational dollars, I think New York State spends the most per pupil of any state in the country. We have basically middle of the road results. And then we have 3 great teachers in this room, not to diminish you, but I mean, there's other things to look at. So I think that Ruth could come up with a scenario and we could immediately decide, you know, we don't want to do that. We don't want to cut this, we don't want to cut that. I think all that Mr. Forsythe, and second by Mr. Reagan, and supported by Ms. Kern is like, let's look at it. What does it actually mean? Dave has made the resolution before 10%. We all went, wow, and it's $5 million. If you look at what we spent here just last week, we did spend we bought paid for 3 of the outposts. So we utilized that extra $6 million that we got, or 10-11 million total, that was distributed amongst the towns in the villages. And we spent that money. So each outpost that we paid for, we saved about $500,000 right there. So if you take that $500,000 on each one, you can save $1 million. That adds up. So let's go to a vote. I will say that it is campaign season, but Mr. Forsythe and Mr. Reagan don't have it better because they're the ones that brought it up. So let's take a vote. Let's do it roll call.
Smithers,
No.
Denisha,
No.
Perkins,
No.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
No.
Haggard, no. Yaco,
No.
Bert,
No.
Barclay,
No.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yeah.
Lightfoot,
No.
Sheridan.
No. Okay, so 10-5, the resolution fails. Okay. All right, do we have a need for executive session?
Do for negotiations, litigation, and appointments.
It's almost better.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, one more thing, and I'm not sure if it's really old or new business. As a follow-up to last Monday's presentation by John Tenbush regarding the state of nuclear energy. at our committee meeting the other night, we had a conversation about what would be the follow-up action to such research and development of stands. And they just kind of wanted to know, in the past, when an advisory council or committee has gone through a process by request of the board to formulate a stance on something, if that should move forward as a resolution, a stance that the board would support as a follow-up to that. So I just was looking for clarification on that, so bring it back to them.
So I will say the next day, Tuesday, a piece in the Wall Street Journal about the increase of interest in the development of nuclear plants. So I gave a copy today to Jonathan Bush that he shared with your committee.
It has already been used.
Oh, it already has been emailed. So I don't know, does anybody else would like to see this article? I gave her a copy. If you would send that out to all the legislators, if you don't want to read it. But it talks about all around the world where there's interest in nuclear. So, good. Thank you, Nicole.
So is there an answer to my question?
Well, why don't we, I guess that's great. So I think when you released the 5 bullet points, I thought this is a political non-stance position that you would create it for politicians. Then the presentation was quite balanced. I don't know, does anyone have a comment? I mean, I wish you, it's like half your committee doesn't want to see nuclear and the other half maybe. But nobody was like, we got to be doing this, right? Am I
I
right?
think the last bullet point provided stance that moving forward and looking at nuclear energy in the county. Although then we have the conversation with the county, who govern any of that, any way that would be municipalities that would be entertaining that. They're the ones that actually have the zoning and all the regulations on that. But I believe that the last bullet defined it as long as going forward as updates and technology advances, that any considerations would consider the safest policies and newest technology and regulations on nuclear.
So personally, I think the agency did a wonderful task. It was a challenging task, created much discussion. And I think as far as the board is probably interested, other than maybe myself, you answered that question. I have another one, but that would be my only individual interest is the EMC's policy and all this solar that is removing land from food production. That would be my interest, and this is what's happening here in St. Lawrence County. Is when I used the word rape, that was not, people were not happy with that, but we are being exploited. It's cheap land, and we are losing acres and acres of production that is directly tied to food, which is going to be the same thing as net zero 2050. It is for needing twice as much food as we're producing right today by the year 2050. They line right up with that goal of the net zero 2050. I think the net zero 2050 is no food. On my end, the solar keeps growing like it is. So if you want to take that challenge, that'll only be my individual respite. I do see other nods around there. But as far as the nuclear, I'm fine.
And I can pass that on to them. I guess the question is not just even about the EMC stance that's presented, but if it's the will of the board that when we ask these committees that we rely on their expertise to kind of guide us in our decision making, would it be appropriate to follow that up with a resolution supporting their stance, or at least, entertaining a resolution to have discussion and vote on it, seeing they have done the ask that we do to them, and the heavy lifting of work to research and formulate that stance. I think that's kind of the ask that I'm looking for.
Okay. So will you draw up the resolution?
I surely will. Thank you.
So we have a resolution on the table that board do a definitive vote on the EMC's presentation. Okay.
Yeah, and the stance that they recommend.
And so there's a second by Mr. Forsythe. All those in favor of that resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Executive session.
Yes, the ones I stated, but also I wanted to request our superintendent of highways to be able to join us for a portion of that. If there's no objection.
Is there a motion to do so? Mrs. Taggart, second by Mr. Perkins. All those in favor of going into executive session signify by saying aye.